She mocked my promotion, in front of everyone, but when I slid that envelope across the table, the laughter stopped. What happened next? No one at that dinner will ever forget. My name is Vanessa, I'm 34 years old, and this is how I turned their betrayal into my blueprint for power. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The lights over the dining room table cast this buttery glow on the plates, the kind of soft, honeyed warmth that turns even the plainest meal into a memory. The crystal dish of cranberry sauce gleamed like a jewel in the middle, the turkey skin glistened under the chandelier, and a faint haze of steam from mashed potatoes hung in the air like an invisible curtain. The faint scent of sage and butter drifted between conversations. Someone passed the green bean casserole, someone else reached for rolls. Forks clinked softly against china, glasses touched, and laughter, thin and polite, filled the spaces between bites. It was Thanksgiving in Tennessee, my parents' house, the same one we'd grown up in, the same wooden floors, same photos on the wall, same tiny hum of the refrigerator that never quite went silent, and everyone was pretending nothing in the world was wrong, and I was fine with that. I sat quietly, my elbows resting loosely at my sides, taking small bites while my mind kept its own rhythm. I'd spent weeks preparing myself for this dinner, for this kind of calm, pretending control. I let my tongue linger on the salt and gravy, pretending to savor, pretending not to see the sidelong glances that came my way. I could hear every scrape of a fork, every sip of wine, every small nervous laugh. The cranberry sauce sat untouched near my elbow, the one thing on the table that was too sweet for the mood. And then, just as my hand reached for the water glass, I saw her shift in her seat. Taylor. My sister. 1 year and 7 months older, but if you'd asked her, she'd say she'd been born a lifetime before me. She wore that confidence like perfume, something invisible but strong enough to sting the air around her. Her brown hair was pulled into a perfectly tight bun, not a strand out of place. Her blouse was cream silk, her lipstick a muted rose that hadn't faded even after a full plate of food. She looked like the picture of composure, of grace, of control. She tapped her wine glass gently with a fork. Just once. The sound was crisp and deliberate, the kind of sound that cuts through chatter without ever sounding demanding. Taylor. So, Vanessa got a promotion? It was said lightly, as if she were sharing a fun fact at a dinner party. Heads turned toward me. Smiles spread automatically. Dad nodded. Aunt Marcia lifted her glass a little. I didn't say anything. Taylor smiled wider. Taylor. Well, she says she did. The pause after that wasn't accidental. It was theatrical. Taylor. But, let's be honest, they probably just felt sorry for her. The air left the room. Forks froze midair. A knife clinked against a plate and stopped. Even the sound of the old furnace humming through the vents seemed to quiet itself. I didn't move. I just blinked once, slowly. My jaw stayed relaxed. Mom furrowed her brow. Dad looked confused, his hand tightening around his napkin. Aunt Marcia. What does that mean? Taylor leaned back, swirling her glass like she'd been waiting for that question. Her tone stayed breezy, almost kind. Taylor. Oh, nothing. I just meant, well, some companies push diversity optics these days. It's not always about merit. There it was, the poison wrapped in a bow, delivered sweetly, like she hadn't thought it through, like it was just an offhand remark. I looked at my plate. The turkey skin had gone cold. The candle beside me flickered and sent a soft glow up the side of my glass. I lifted my eyes slowly to meet hers. There was that smile again, that smug little twist that only she could manage, like she'd won something invisible, like I was supposed to crumble under it, but I didn't. Me. Are you sure you want to talk about my promotion? The table shifted. Chairs creaked softly. Mom looked from me to her, confused. Taylor lifted her chin, still smiling. Taylor. Of course, we're all family here. Perfect. I reached for my napkin and folded it neatly beside my plate. The fabric felt warm against my fingertips. My heart wasn't racing. Not yet. I'd rehearsed this moment in my mind for days, maybe weeks. Under the table, my hand brushed against the strap of my purse resting by my legs. My fingers closed around the envelope inside, crisp, thick, and cool against my skin. Without saying a word, I pulled it out. The white paper caught the golden light, edges sharp, my name handwritten in blue ink across the front. Taylor's smile faltered just slightly. I placed it on the table, the sound of it sliding across the linen sharp in the silence. Then, slowly, I opened it. The rustle of paper was louder than it should have been. I pulled out the first sheet, straightened it carefully, and set it in front of me. Then, with the same steady hand, I pushed it across the table toward her. Her eyes narrowed as it reached her. "Dad, what's this?" I didn't answer. Taylor picked it up, her manicured fingers holding the edge just long enough before her eyes darted to the header. It was the internal company announcement. Subject: New department head appointment, Vanessa M. Rivers. Sent by the CEO, CC'd to every senior staff member. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Aunt Marcia leaned over, squinting. The reflection of the paper glinted in her glasses. I watched the realization move across Taylor's face. Slow, forced, undeniable. Then I reached into the envelope again. Me. This one might be harder to explain. I pulled out the second page and laid it gently next to the first. Her gaze flicked toward it, and I saw the panic begin to gather in the corners of her eyes before she even touched it. It was an HR rejection letter, addressed to Taylor, dated 4 weeks before. "Thank you for your application to the position of department head. Unfortunately, we've decided to proceed with another candidate." The words were like cold steel in the candlelight. Silence. The kind that feels heavy. The kind that pulls air from the room. Taylor. Where did you get this?" Her voice cracked halfway through. Me. "It was forwarded to me. I was the candidate they proceeded with." Mom shifted in her chair, her hand instinctively reaching for Dad's arm. Mom. "Wait, you applied too, Taylor?" For a second, Taylor's face looked like glass ready to break. Taylor. I was exploring options. I didn't know it was... I didn't think... Her words tangled over each other. I tilted my head. My voice stayed quiet even, like a knife laid flat on the table. Me. "There's more." My hand returned to the envelope. The third page slid free, the paper whispering as it met the air. It was a printed email, a recommendation request she'd sent to another company, claiming she was unemployed, struggling, and desperate for leadership experience. I set it down beside the others. No anger, just truth. Her eyes darted from one page to the next, her breathing shallow, color draining from her cheeks. The room didn't move. Even the candles seemed to burn quieter. Aunt Marcia's lips parted slightly. Uncle Rob's glass made a soft thud as it touched the table. No one dared fill the silence. Taylor stared at the papers like they might catch fire. Her throat moved once, but no sound followed. She'd wanted attention. Now she had it. Every pair of eyes around that table was fixed on her, seeing her for who she was, maybe for the first time. Mom's fingers trembled against her fork. Dad's expression hardened into something between disappointment and disbelief. And me? I stayed perfectly still. Taylor suddenly pushed her chair back. The legs screeched against the floor, breaking the silence like glass. "Taylor, I need to use the restroom." She didn't wait for anyone to say a word. Her heels clicked quickly down the hallway. The sound faded into nothing. I lifted my glass. The wine tasted softer now. I took a small sip, set it down, and let the silence breathe. Nobody spoke for nearly a full minute. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "Dad." "Well, that clears things up." A nervous laugh almost escaped Aunt Marcia, but she stopped herself. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just folded the papers slowly and carefully, slid them back into the envelope, and tucked it into my bag. The envelope's edge brushed against the leather, soft and final. I looked around the table one last time, the chandelier light still warm, the turkey now half gone, the cranberry sauce still untouched. Taylor had wanted to humiliate me. She'd wanted to twist the truth until it bent into her story, but all it took was a single envelope and 3 sheets of paper to turn it back into mine. She lied to ruin my moment, so I used the truth to end hers. They always say family knows you best, but sitting there at that Thanksgiving table in Tennessee with the smell of roasted turkey still clinging to the air, I realized something else. Family also knows exactly where to cut the deepest. When Taylor left the room, the silence she dragged behind her didn't move. It sat there, thick and unmoving, the way humid air does before a storm breaks. The tick of the wall clock grew louder, every second a reminder that no one dared speak first. The scent of roasted garlic, butter, and sage still floated over the table, fighting against the sour metallic edge of tension. My fork hovered above my plate, tracing small patterns in the crumbs like I could distract myself from the weight in the room. Mom was the first to break. She always was. Mom, Vanessa, honey, why didn't you tell us she applied for the same job? Her voice came out fragile, like a glass trying not to crack. There wasn't judgment in it, just disbelief. That kind of soft disbelief that parents carry when they realize their children's rivalry isn't a phase. I didn't look up. Me. Because it didn't matter. My tone was steady, deliberate, the kind of calm that scares people because it means you've already thought everything through. Mom stayed quiet for a beat. I could feel her gaze, heavy and worried, trying to read me like she used to when I was a teenager coming home late. But I didn't give her anything. Over the years, I'd learned that silence was its own language. Sometimes the absence of words said more than any explanation could. The dining room light shimmered off the crystal glasses. Someone's fork tapped nervously against porcelain. Dad leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, his sleeves rolled to his forearms. The plaid shirt he wore had faint wrinkles near the cuffs. He'd probably been outside earlier, bringing in firewood before dinner. His hands were rough from decades of working, but his eyes were kind, the kind that still believed people mean well. Dad, did she did she try to sabotage you? Is that what this was? I met his eyes briefly, then shook my head once. Me. No, this wasn't about sabotage. Not tonight, at least. He frowned slightly, not understanding. None of them really did. The thing about growing up in a family like ours, middle class, predictable, quiet, is that no one prepares you for internal wars. We were the kind of people who sent thank you cards after church bake sales, who borrowed sugar from neighbors, who smiled at the grocery store clerk because it was polite. In our world, envy didn't exist. Not really. It was something that happened in books or in rich families with inheritance feuds, but envy had a way of slipping under the door, uninvited. Taylor never grew out of anything. Not the competition, not the need to win invisible prizes, not the obsession with appearances. Down the hallway, I heard the bathroom faucet running, the faint echo of water against porcelain. She was still in there, probably gripping the sink, trying to breathe, trying to fix her lipstick like it could hold her world together. Aunt Marcia cleared her throat softly. The sound was small, but in the quiet it carried. Aunt Marcia. She shouldn't have said that about you. Not in front of everyone. I gave her a polite nod. Me. She's done worse. The words slipped out before I could stop them. They weren't meant to sound sharp, but they did. The effect was instant. The table shifted with discomfort. Someone exhaled too loudly. I could feel the surprise ripple around me. I'd always been the calm one, the mediator, the one who smoothed rough edges, who took deep breaths and said things like, "It's fine," when it wasn't. The one who swallowed the small humiliations for the sake of keeping peace. But peace, I'd learned, is overrated when it's built on silence. Dad rubbed the bridge of his nose, like the weight of the evening had settled behind his eyes. Dad, if something's been going on between you two, you can tell us. Lord knows your sister can be, well, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Everyone at that table had seen Taylor's brand of sweetness before, how it curdled just enough to sting. I lifted my gaze slowly, meeting his eyes. Me. She's been spreading things at family gatherings for years. Tonight was just the first time I answered back. Mom's mouth opened slightly, caught between shock and guilt. Mom, why didn't you say anything sooner? Me, because I didn't have the proof then. Simple, clean, true. And that was the rule I'd learned the hard way. I don't fight battles I can't win. Not anymore. In the distance, water ran again. The faint clink of a faucet shutting off echoed down the hall. Every head turned slightly toward the sound. We all knew she'd come back. We just didn't know what version of her we'd get this time. Mom leaned closer, lowering her voice like the house itself might overhear. Mom, your sister loves you. You know that. Her voice trembled with that old parental hope that love could fix everything. I looked at her gently. Me. She loves the version of me she can beat. The words hung there, quiet but final. The hallway creaked softly under a returning pair of heels. Taylor was coming back. When she appeared again, her face was pale but polished, shoulders square, eyes dry, lipstick repaired but slightly uneven, betraying the rush. She slid back into her seat with exaggerated calm. The room waited. She reached for her fork and scraped the plate once. The sound grated through the silence. She didn't touch her wine. Taylor. Well, that was dramatic. Dad didn't move, didn't blink. Dad. That was the truth. His voice had a firmness I hadn't heard in years. It startled her. She stared at him as if he'd just broken a family law. Her fingers tightened around her napkin, twisting it until the fabric wrinkled into a rope. Taylor. I was just joking, teasing her. Her tone trembled at the edges, trying to find its way back to that airy charm she'd used earlier. Me. You were lying. It wasn't loud, it wasn't emotional. It just landed, like a dropped coin in an empty room. She blinked hard, looking anywhere but at me. Taylor. You didn't have to bring up that other stuff. That was personal. Me. So was my promotion. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Her jaw flexed once, the muscle tightening along her cheek. A twitch I'd seen before, back when we were kids and I'd beaten her in the county spelling bee. Uncle Rob, sitting across from her, leaned back in his chair, his thick hands folded on his stomach. Uncle Rob, you're the one who opened that door, Taylor. She turned toward him sharply, eyebrows drawn. Taylor, this isn't your business. His eyes didn't waver. Uncle Rob, you made it our business when you made that announcement. The authority in his voice filled the room. It wasn't just a comment, it was judgment, and she felt it. For the first time all evening, Taylor looked smaller. She turned back to me, eyes glossy but defiant. Taylor, you humiliated me. Me, you tried to humiliate me first. There was no venom in my voice, just symmetry. The air thickened again. Forks sat untouched. The gravy congealed slowly, forgotten in the middle of the table. She shook her head, her tone slipping from defensive to wounded. Taylor, you always think you're better than me. There it was, the old line, the family refrain. The phrase she'd used every time life didn't tilt in her favor. High school graduation, college acceptances, first job, first car. Every moment I'd earned something, she'd tried to shrink it down. Me. No, I think you want me to be smaller than you. Her breath caught, just slightly, enough to tell me it landed. Taylor. You didn't have to show everyone. Me. You were counting on the fact that I wouldn't. It wasn't anger anymore. It was recognition. Two women, two sisters, looking at each other and finally seeing what they'd both done. The tension broke like glass under pressure. Mom whispered my name softly, unsure which of us she was trying to reach. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Taylor pushed her plate away with a scrape that echoed through the room. She stood abruptly, grabbing her coat off the back of the chair. The fabric brushed the edge of her wine glass, tilting it just enough to spill a red crescent on the tablecloth. She didn't even notice. Taylor. I'm going home. No one stopped her. The sound of her heels clicked against the hardwood, each step sharp and defiant. The front door creaked open, a rush of cold air slipping in from outside. Before she crossed the threshold, I said her name quietly. Me. Taylor. She hesitated but didn't turn around. Me. Some betrayals don't leave bruises, just silence. She froze for half a heartbeat, then left. The door closed softly behind her. The quiet that followed was different. Not heavy anymore. Just empty in a peaceful way. I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. My chest ached with the release. Dad reached for his glass, the faint sound of liquid pouring breaking the stillness. Dad. Well, that was something. A half smile tugged at his mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Because deep down, everyone at that table already knew. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the unraveling. The strange thing about silence is how loud it becomes after a blow-up. The door had barely clicked shut behind Taylor, but the tension she left behind stayed thick in the air, like humidity before a Tennessee thunderstorm. The air conditioner kicked on with a low hum, stirring the scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon candles. But even that small sound seemed too loud. No one moved at first. Forks stayed frozen mid-air. Glasses stood untouched. Even the flicker of candle flames looked uneasy, bending slightly as though holding their breath with us. Dad finally cleared his throat, the sound startling in the stillness. He reached for one of the half-empty serving bowls, mashed potatoes now forming a soft crust at the edges. Dad. Well, I guess we should finish dinner. His voice wavered halfway through, like he already knew the attempt at normalcy was doomed. Still, he scooped a spoonful of potatoes onto his plate and passed the bowl left, as if politeness could patch the hole in the evening. Mom rubbed the side of her forehead, staring at the empty chair where Taylor had been. She wasn't crying, but her eyes glistened with a quiet ache. The kind that comes when you realize the daughter you raised isn't the daughter you thought you knew. Mom. I just don't understand why she had to do that tonight. She wasn't really speaking to me, or anyone, just to the air, maybe to herself. I lifted my gaze, voice steady, though my pulse still thudded faintly in my ears. Me. She wanted an audience. The words fell softly, but they rang through the room like a truth no one wanted to name. Aunt Marcia, always the peacemaker, placed her fork down with deliberate care and leaned closer to me. The reflection of candlelight shimmered on her glasses. Aunt Marcia. How long has this been happening? Me. Since we were kids? The answer left my mouth before I even processed it. My throat tightened slightly, but I kept going. Me. She corrects me, diminishes things, twists things, and people always think she's joking. Uncle Rob set his glass down. His deep voice cut through the quiet. Uncle Rob. She wasn't joking tonight. Mom looked at him sharply, protective instinct flashing through her eyes, but he didn't back down. He looked at me instead, steady, waiting for me to continue. Me. Tonight wasn't new. Tonight was just public. And it was true. For years, Taylor's little remarks had been whispered daggers, subtle enough to go unnoticed, sharp enough to leave marks. At birthdays, she'd make teasing comments about my career. At Christmas, she'd laugh about how I always dated the wrong type. Every jab disguised as sisterly concern, wrapped in laughter others mistook for affection. She'd been rewriting my image one conversation at a time. Nothing dramatic, just steady erosion. But tonight, she'd decided to make it a performance, and I finally gave her an audience she couldn't control. Mom folded her napkin slowly, fingers trembling as she tried to smooth invisible creases. Mom, you two need to talk when things calm down. I looked at her, my tone softer now, but certain. Me. She didn't want to talk. She wanted to perform. The truth hit the air like a quiet confession. Dad's shoulders eased slightly as though something inside him clicked into place. He'd seen pieces of this over the years, an offhand comment here, a glare there, but he'd always dismissed it. That's just how sisters are, he used to say. But now, I saw it in his eyes, the dawning recognition, because rivalry ends when you grow up. Resentment grows up with you. From the far end of the table, my younger cousin Lily spoke, her voice timid but clear. Lily, I always thought you and Taylor were perfect sisters. The innocence in her words almost made me laugh, not out of cruelty, just exhaustion. Me. You only saw the picture she painted, not the one underneath. Her eyes widened and she nodded slowly. That single nod, quiet, understanding, felt heavier than all the others' stares. Dad pushed his chair back with a soft scrape. Dad, I'm gonna go check on her car. Make sure she didn't peel out of the driveway like last Christmas. Mom winced. Mom. Robert. But he was already gone, footsteps echoing toward the front hall. He needed movement when emotions got too loud. That was his way of coping. Fix something physical when he couldn't fix the emotional. The rest of us sat suspended in stillness again. I rested my hands loosely on my lap, watching the way the candlelight reflected off the silverware. Everything looked the same, yet everything had shifted. Families rarely explode. They decay quietly, layer by layer. Then, one night, without warning, the cracks show all at once. Aunt Marcia stood suddenly, smoothing her cardigan. Aunt Marcia. Well, I'm not letting good potatoes go to waste. Vanessa, sweetheart, want a little more? Her voice was softer than usual, kind, maternal, like she was trying to patch the air with warmth. I smiled faintly. Me. Maybe in a minute. My appetite hadn't caught up to my body yet. While conversation started up again in cautious, fragmented sentences, I slipped my hand beneath the table. My fingertips brushed the edge of my leather bag. The envelope was still there, cool, thick, resting like a quiet witness, proof in paper form. I hadn't brought it to destroy her, not exactly. I'd brought it because I'd known, instinctively, that she'd try something. Taylor was predictable that way, not the words, not the timing, but the motive. She couldn't let me have peace without taking a bite out of it. So I came prepared. Because I'd learned that the only way to survive people like her is to know what truth looks like before they twist it. Mom's voice pulled me back. Mom. Vanessa, honey, did you really think all this was necessary? Her tone wasn't sharp. It was weary, like she wanted me to say something that would make it all easier to swallow. I met her eyes. Me. Necessary? No, but it was fair. The room went still again. Even Aunt Marcia paused, spoon hovering over the potatoes. Mom blinked, lips pressed together. She was searching my face for anger, for cruelty, for anything she could name, but there wasn't any. I felt clean, calm, like I'd stepped out of a storm. Mom. But in front of everyone? Me. She attacked me in front of everyone. The exchange landed like a gavel. From the front hallway, the door creaked. Dad's voice floated back. Dad. Car's gone, she left fast. Mom sighed, her shoulders sagging under invisible weight. Dad returned, sliding into his chair again. His face looked older under the warm chandelier light, but his eyes held something firm. Pride, maybe, or understanding. He looked around the table before speaking. Dad. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Every conversation stopped. Mom froze mid-blink. Aunt Marcia's hand hovered halfway to her plate. Even Uncle Rob, who rarely reacted to anything, looked up from his glass. Dad wasn't a man who picked sides, not ever. His version of fairness was to stay quiet, but tonight, something had shifted even in him. Dad, you didn't yell, you didn't lash out, you just told the truth. He nodded once, like the verdict had been delivered. Dad, sometimes people need to see consequences. The words settled like dust, soft but impossible to ignore. Mom's eyes closed briefly. Maybe she was praying, or maybe she was remembering all the times she'd told us. Sisters should protect each other. I hadn't felt seen by my father in years, but right then I did, completely. The dinner carried on after that in gentle murmurs. Plates clinked again. Timid laughter tried to reappear. No one mentioned Taylor's name, but she hovered there anyway, like a ghost sitting at the empty chair. When dessert came out, store-bought pumpkin pie from Kroger, the one Mom always kept just in case. People smiled again, talked about trivial things, weather, work, the neighbor's new dog. The tension softened, but the truth stayed. Because once a mask cracks, you can't unsee the face beneath it. Later, when we gathered leftovers into foil and zipped coats, Mom followed me to the front door. The night outside was quiet and sharp, the sky dusted with faint stars. She touched my arm gently, her eyes soft but tired. Mom, I'm just worried about both of you. Me. I know. She hesitated. Mom, can this be fixed? I looked past her through the doorway where the yard was bathed in silver moonlight and the wind stirred the last fallen leaves. Me. I'm not the one who broke it. She nodded slowly, a tear slipping free before she brushed it away. As I stepped outside, the gravel crunched under my boots. The night air felt colder than before, but lighter somehow. Not because everything was healed, but because everything was finally honest. Some stories aren't meant to be whispered behind closed doors. Some stories need air, even if they sting, especially if they sting. I knew one thing for certain as I slid into my car and looked back at the warm glow of the house. Taylor wasn't done, and neither was I. The days after Thanksgiving passed like a fog I didn't know I was walking through until I was already out of it. Morning light slid across my apartment walls each day, turning from pale gold to gray, but I barely noticed. My phone stayed face down most of the time, buzzing occasionally against the counter. Tiny reminders that the world hadn't stopped just because mine had shifted. Texts trickled in. Some were short, but heavy with meaning. Aunt Marcia. Proud of you. Uncle Rob. Truth matters. Lily. That was brave. Just wanted to say that. But from Taylor, nothing. Not a single message. Not even the passive-aggressive emoji she usually sent after family fights. She used to pretend indifference. I wasn't expecting an apology. I'd known her long enough to stop hoping for that. But silence has a sound, a density, and hers was deafening. It followed me through the week like a pulse under the noise of everything else. By Monday, I was back in the office. Downtown Nashville buzzed outside my window. Traffic humming, street vendors calling out, someone playing a steel guitar near the corner of Church Street. The city carried on, full of ambition and noise. Inside, it was quieter. The nameplate on the door outside my glass office gleamed in the morning light. Vanessa Rivers, Department Head, Consumer Strategy. It didn't make me feel untouchable. It made me feel steady, grounded, like I'd finally earned the quiet. The hum of fluorescent lights blended with the faint murmur of keyboards from the open floor. Coffee steamed on my desk beside a small stack of client proposals. I was rereading a market brief when there was a soft knock at the door. Marcus, my assistant, leaned in, always polite, always cautious. Marcus. Vanessa, you have a visitor. No appointment. I didn't look up right away. Me. Did they give a name? He hesitated. That tiny pause said everything before the words even came. Marcus. It's your sister. The air shifted, just a fraction. My chest tightened, not from fear, not even from anger. Just readiness. Me. Let her in. He nodded and stepped aside. The door clicked open, and there she was, Taylor. Same neat bun, same tailored coat, same polished heels that clicked with precision against the hardwood. Her perfume arrived before her voice did, something floral, expensive, familiar from holidays past. But something about her was off. Her lipstick was flawless, too flawless. Her posture was rigid, too deliberate, every gesture rehearsed. She was wearing control like armor. Taylor. Nice office. Her tone was flat, almost performative. Me. Thanks. I motioned to the chair across from my desk. She sat but didn't lean back. Her hands rested in her lap, knuckles white. Taylor. I didn't come to fight. Me. Good. The word left my mouth with a calmness I didn't feel the need to fake. She studied me for a moment, eyes scanning the framed certificates on the wall, the tidy desk, the small plant in the corner that Marcus watered religiously. She wasn't looking at my office. She was searching for weakness. Taylor. You made me look like a fool. Me. No, Taylor. I just stopped covering for you. The response landed softly, but it hit her like impact. Her jaw flexed. No retort. Not yet. She was weighing her words now, something she rarely did. Taylor, I've had a rough year. You don't know everything that's been going on. Me. You're right, I don't. But none of that gave you the right to humiliate me at that table. The silence stretched. She looked toward the window, the Nashville skyline reflecting in the glass behind me. For a brief moment, I wondered what she saw, regret, maybe, or envy wrapped in exhaustion. Taylor. I was supposed to get that job. Her voice cracked on supposed. Me. You didn't make the final cut. Taylor. I should have. The words came out fragile, half anger, half grief. Me. You sent in a rushed application, no updated references, and you lied about your employment status. HR flagged it. I didn't say a word until you gave me no choice. Her eyes snapped back to me then, the fire flickering just beneath the surface. But underneath it, there was something else. Defeat. For a split second, I saw the little girl who used to storm out of the room when she lost at Monopoly, the one who couldn't stand not being the favorite. Taylor. You made me look like I was nothing. Me. I didn't ruin you. I just stopped protecting you from consequences. The truth in my tone made her flinch. She blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. Taylor. What do you want from me? I stood slowly, letting the chair legs scrape softly against the floor. I walked to the shelf behind my desk and picked up the sealed envelope that had arrived that morning. Cream paper, my handwriting on the front. Me. Nothing. I handed it to her. She didn't reach for it right away. Me. This is your letter of recommendation. I rewrote it, properly this time, based on your work from the Westbrook project 2 years ago. Her fingers trembled when she finally took it. She stared at it like it might be a trick. Me. It's not forgiveness. It's fairness. I'm not like you. Her breath caught. She didn't open the envelope. She didn't even blink. Her throat moved once before she managed to speak. Taylor. Why help me at all? Me. Because I know how much it hurts to feel like the failure in the family, and I don't want to be the reason you stay there. For a moment, her face cracked. Not much. Just enough to reveal something raw beneath the polish. But Taylor didn't cry in front of people. She never did. She turned pain into posture. Taylor. I don't know how to fix this. Me. That's not my job anymore. She nodded once. Slow. The movement was small but final. Then she turned toward the door. No dramatics, no raised voice, just the sound of her heels crossing the floor, the soft rustle of her coat as she reached for the handle. She left the way she came, composed, collected, pretending the air didn't feel different now. The door clicked shut behind her. 10 seconds later, Marcus peeked in. Marcus. Everything okay? Me. Yeah. It will be. He gave a small nod and disappeared again, leaving me in the quiet hum of the office. I sank back into my chair, eyes drifting toward the window. Nashville glowed outside, the river glinting in the afternoon sun, cars weaving between buildings, people moving forward like nothing ever stops them. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean, because revenge had never been the goal. That envelope at Thanksgiving wasn't the real strike. This was. This quiet, measured moment when she had to sit with what she'd built and realize I wouldn't be the wall she could lean on anymore. I didn't yell. I didn't gloat. I simply outgrew her, right there in front of her eyes. 2 weeks passed. Taylor didn't reach out again, and neither did I. For the first few days, I kept waiting for something. A text, a call, even a sarcastic meme she might have used as a half apology. But the silence stretched, heavy and unbroken. It filled the corners of my apartment, followed me into the elevator at work, trailed behind me when I walked through the grocery store aisles. I thought maybe that would be the end of it, that our Thanksgiving explosion and the quiet office confrontation would fade into the kind of silence that becomes permanent, when you both know the relationship is too fractured to mend, but neither of you wants to admit it out loud. Then, one Thursday night, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The family group chat. Mom. Christmas dinner at our place, same time as always. Aunt Marcia. Should we bring desserts or sides? Cousin Lily. I'll bake the cookies again. I stared at the messages longer than I should have. My thumb hovered over the screen. For a while, no one mentioned Taylor. No one even asked if she'd be there. Then, 2 days later, her name appeared. Just a single gray bubble. Taylor. I'll come by for dessert. Short. Cold. Familiar. That was her language. Not reconciliation. Appearance. She wouldn't apologize. She'd show up just late enough to skip the tension, just early enough to keep her place in the family narrative intact. That was how she managed every mess she ever made, by arriving just after the storm. Christmas came with soft flurries drifting over the Tennessee hills, the kind of snow that doesn't quite stick, but still makes the air smell like new beginnings. Inside my parents' house, everything felt preserved in time: pine garlands over the mantel, stockings hanging by name, a half-tilted angel on the top of the tree. The house smelled like cinnamon and glazed ham and something older, memories baked into the wood. I wore a dark green dress that night, the same shade Taylor used to call a funeral color, but I liked the way it felt, grounded, quiet, strong. It reminded me of still water, of calm that can't be shaken. She arrived 37 minutes late, not a minute more, not a minute less. I knew because I checked the clock. When she walked in, she was wrapped in the scent of expensive perfume and the hum of self-control. She held a neatly wrapped box with silver ribbon and wore the kind of smile people practice in mirrors. Taylor. Merry Christmas. She hugged Mom, kissed Aunt Marcia's cheek, laughed at something Lily said. She moved around the room like she was auditioning for the role of good daughter. She didn't look at me. Not right away, but I wasn't hiding anymore. After dinner, when the table was cleared and the house filled with the soft rustle of conversation, she finally walked over. The fireplace flickered behind her, casting moving shadows across the room. She sat down beside me on the couch, leaving a careful space between us. Taylor. You look tired. Me. I'm not. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve, pretending to focus on it. The lights from the Christmas tree blinked softly across her face, alternating between gold and green. Taylor. I sent out applications. Your letter helped. Me. Good. She nodded, as if confirming it to herself. Taylor. There's a position opening in Atlanta, still in the same field. Me. That's a good city. Her eyes flicked up, studying me, not with hostility this time, with curiosity, like she was trying to decode me again, but the key didn't fit anymore. Taylor. I wanted to say... She stopped, bit her lip, and exhaled slowly. Taylor. You handled it better than I would have. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest I would ever get. I met her eyes and held them. Me. I know. Her mouth twitched, maybe a smile, maybe something close to regret. For the first time, she didn't look like she was rehearsing her lines. We sat there in silence. Not the brittle kind from Thanksgiving, but something softer. The kind that lets people breathe. The tree lights shimmered against the window, scattering faint reflections across the floor. In the kitchen, Mom laughed quietly with Aunt Marcia over something on the stove. Dad hummed a carol off-key while cleaning glasses at the sink. For a moment it almost felt normal. Mom passed by with 2 mugs of hot chocolate, whipped cream melting at the edges. Her eyes flicked toward us, surprised, maybe even hopeful. She didn't say a word, just set the mugs on the coffee table and kept walking. Taylor wrapped her hands around one of them, the steam fogging her glasses slightly. After a while, she stood, straightened her coat. Taylor. I'm not going to fix everything overnight. Me. I'm not asking you to. Taylor. But I'm trying. The words were simple, unpolished, real. I didn't answer right away. I just nodded once. She gave a small exhale, then walked toward the kitchen to help Mom with dessert. And just like that, something shifted. Not a full repair, not forgiveness. Just a loosening. A thread unknotted, quietly, without ceremony. I looked down at my hands resting on my lap, the same hands that had once held my promotion letter, that had stayed steady when I laid out the truth at Thanksgiving. They looked different now, not stronger, not harder. Just mine again. People think revenge is rage, that it's fire and shouting and slammed doors. But that's not the kind that lasts. The most powerful revenge I've ever known was calm, measured, truthful, because what I gave Taylor that night wasn't punishment, it was a mirror, and when she saw it, she cracked. Not because I wanted her to hurt, but because for the first time she couldn't hide from what she'd become. She lied to ruin my moment, so I used the truth to end hers. And then, when she had nothing left to twist, I gave her the tools to rebuild if she chose to. That's the part people forget about justice. It isn't always loud. It doesn't always arrive in a courtroom or a headline. Sometimes it comes with an envelope, a letter, a quiet walk away. As I watched Taylor laugh faintly at something Mom said, I realized I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't even resent her. I just released her. And maybe that was the final revenge of all, letting go without losing myself in the process. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.